Hello, I'm Debs K. Thanks so much for joining me, and Kit Kat, and welcome to my little studio this week. It's rather chilly this week. Don't know what it's like where you are in the world, but certainly here in Brittany in France. Oh gosh. So I thought we'd stay with one more little snow scene this week, and this time we're going to do a little puppy. Oh, cuteness overload. We're going to be painting this little painting here. Just a little 8x8 painted on Fisher 400 sanded paper. I'll tell you about the reference photo and things as we go on through to the painting, but let's have a look at the colours that I chose and let's get painting. Okay, so let's have a little look at the colours I chose for this cute little puppy here. As you can see, I've got quite a few pastel pencils there, mixture of sort of browns and sort of some nice creamy colours there and a few greys. I've got a couple of light blue there for the snow, and then obviously my soft pastels as well. Now, obviously you can do this, as I always say, you can do it in soft pastels. Just this was a little tiny one, only 8x8. So, you know, the little pastel pencils came in very handy because they're quite little tiny spaces. So you might find you struggle a bit with the soft pastels, you know, or obviously you can do your picture a little bit bigger and you can use just all soft pastels. Okay, so, but as I always say to you, you know, don't worry too much if you haven't got these exact colours. Just choose something, you know, things along similar lines from your own palette and take it from there. I didn't use all of these colours, I'm pretty sure, but these are the ones sort of colours that I picked out from my initial palette and then sort of used them as I went. All right then, okay, so let's get painting. So here we go. As you can see, I've got my little trace down there, which I did of this gorgeous little puppy. Found this gorgeous little reference photo over on PaintmyPhoto from a lady called KiriKina, I think her name is. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back from her as to whether I can show it in the video, but you can pop on over to PaintmyPhoto and download the link and you know, for yourself if you want to have a go. Now, I've done, my little painting was only a little 8x8, which is why, as I mentioned in the colours, I've used the pastel pencils, and I use them quite a lot in this painting. Purely because of the size, really. I sort of use a mixture. I use the soft pastels as well, but there's a lot of little tiny little details in there that I just found the pastel pencils helpful for. But as I always say, you know, you can use soft pastels all the way along, but you might find it helpful. If you're using soft pastels, I would suggest making your painting a little bit bigger than this, because you will find it, you know, the proportion of the puppy itself, as you can see next to my hand there, he's only really quite small, so the pastel pencils will help you. So the first thing I did, as I mentioned, you know, I did a little quick trace down of this. Now, I did a trace down just to save myself a little bit of time and make sure that I got all of his main features and you know, in the right place. Now, obviously you can do a freehand sketch or use a grid, you know, however you feel most comfortable starting off your painting. There's no right or wrong. Pastels move around anyway as you're going, you know, so but if you can start off with everything kind of vaguely in the right place, it'll help you as you go. All right, so as I say, my painting's an 8x8 and I've painted this on Fisher 400 sanded paper. And what you're seeing me doing now is I'm just coming in with a very dark or reasonably dark grey pastel pencil there. And what I'm doing is the first thing I did was re-establish those eyes to make sure that they're going to be in the right place. I think this is one of the most adorable things about this photo was obviously he was just having such a joyful time playing in the snow, you know, one of probably the first time he's ever seen it. You know, he's had his little nose in it, and I love the kind of snow on his nose. And I also loved his gorgeous little, his eyes were slightly, you know, slightly crossed, little you know, and it was just so cute. And I wanted to capture that. So I really wanted to make sure those, you know, those eyes are going to be looking, you know, it gives the feeling of this little pup. Now, obviously, you know, this isn't a portrait, so I haven't necessarily, you know, I'm not necessarily worried too much about the colouring on him or if things aren't exactly right. But I did want to capture his character, and I did really want to capture the fun about him. And it was such an adorable painting to paint. You know, I felt as if I was with there watching him. Those of you who know me know I'm a little bit doggy mad. I've got quite a few of them myself, and there's nothing more joyful than a little pup having a run around and play. So as I say, the first thing I'm doing is coming in with my dark, you know, a dark grey, mid to dark grey there. And what I'm doing is I'm just, sort of mapping out, all those sort of areas where I've got the shading. And just trying to get all of those shapes in place to start me off in the right direction. So I always say to you, if you don't have pastel pencils, you can come in, as you're seeing me doing now, with your soft pastels and get all those shapes in place. But once I had got my pastel pencils in place, I just went into the background with my soft pastels, and I wanted to get that, the base of that down really. And I used this combination of these gorgeous purples and aquas to start me off, because I want, I don't want to feel as if this puppy sort of cut and pasted onto his background. I want to make him feel part of the scene. So I got sort of the basis of my background in after there. And as you can see, all I did was sort of like look at the reference photo, and I had a little look at where those sort of, areas of light and shade were. And so now what I'm doing is I'm coming in with my soft pastels now, and just getting a little bit more colour down on our little pup. Just want to get, as I say, sort of map out those areas as I did with the pastel pencil, just sort of reaffirming what I did at the beginning. And I'm using a couple of dark values, as I always do, use a couple of different colours in any one area, to get those, so I've got a nice sort of blend going on there. You'll see me coming in a moment and sort of blending this in, just to give myself a little bit of a base. One of the things I really, loved about this painting was the fact that he was, so soft and fluffy, and I really wanted to create that depth in his coat. So I do go around the pup several times, sort of like adding more and more layers, sort of adding a layer, rubbing in, and then adding some more. And as you can see, what I'm doing now is I am sort of blending all that in, and I've actually got the end of a little pan pastel tool, and I've actually just used the sponge of it. Could obviously use the applicator or a different tool at this stage, but I kind of like to get up close and personal really. So often I find I get that little, especially when I'm doing a little painting, get that little tiny sponge, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing that into the paper. Really want to get that into the tooth of the paper, to allow me to build up those layers. And now what I'm doing, I've actually got a pastel in my hand now, and I'm, sort of rubbing that little sponge on the pastel, come up the value scale a little bit, using a little bit of tan there, and rubbing my sponge on the pastel, and then sort of like rubbing that on the paper, just to give me a little bit of a feel of those sort of lighter areas in him. So now coming round and sort of doing the same again, coming back in with my darks, reaffirming them. And you'll see me do this a couple of times, sort of as I go round the puppy. So what I'll do is I'll pop a little bit of music on at the moment, let you watch this little jolly, these base layers of this puppy come together, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, I've got most of my darks in there now. And as you can see, I just went backwards and forwards a couple of times, just getting that depth, rubbing it in and then coming back and doing some more. And you're seeing me there now. I've got my trusty DIY paintbrush there with its hard bristles to help me blend out some areas. Now you can use anything there. You can use perhaps a paper torsion to blend out, or your fingers, whatever you feel most comfortable with. It's just that I find that little handy tool very, very useful. Wish I could find it again. And so now I'm sort of starting to tackle these lighter areas. Now I'm coming in with a rich gold at the moment. Now this is too yellow for me, but I'm a little bit limited on my sort of tans and things and those sort of colours in my palette. So I'm using this as a base to get me going, and then you'll see me coming in sort of using it at the moment. I've got sort of more of a buffy colour to put on the top. As I say, this isn't sort of like a commission portrait as such, so I'm not sort of too worried if I'm not exactly right on colours and things. It's just kind of the feeling of the pup that I want to create. So obviously, you know, depending on what you've got in your palette, you can use, whatever colours you want for your lighter areas. But I did want to sort of mention at this stage, obviously don't worry too much if you haven't got the exact colours. As you'll see in these light, when I'm putting these light tones here now, I do change the colours by adding different colours to them. I didn't have the exact colour that I wanted, so I've used, several different colours, and I come back with my pencils again to get the colour that I want, which is what you can do. You don't have to worry too much if you don't have the exact colours. Normally with pastels, if you use a couple of different different colours along similar lines, you can usually get the shade that you want. So sort of like now having got that basis of my light areas in, I'm now coming in with my pastel pencils, getting the shape of his nose in, using a black for his little nostrils there, and also using that black as well to sort of edge out into the fur where I want it that little bit darker. When I'm using it sort of like across the fur, I'm sort of more scumbling it over across just to sort of darken down little areas. And obviously, as you can see me there with his eyes there now, I'm using the pastel pencils in a little bit of a harder fashion. As I say, you don't need to do this with pastel pencils. You can certainly do it with soft pastels, but what I suggest if you're using soft pastels, they are chunky things, so perhaps maybe make your painting a little bit larger than this little tiny 8x8. So what you're seeing me doing now is I'm literally going round again and, just adding the depth until I get this sort of puppy to the feeling that I want. I really want him to feel fluffy. So I keep going round until I sort of like get him to the level that I want to. All right, so I'll pop this jolly little music back on again for a couple of mows, and I'll see you in a bit. as you can see, you know, his coat's really starting to build up there, getting a good depth in there now. So what I'm doing, as you can see, I've got a selection of pastel pencils in my hand, and really what I'm doing now is, you know, really concentrating on, you know, refining some of these details now. You know, getting those real sort of more nuances of his coat there now, sort of re-establishing his eyes. And I'm going through his coat, sort of adjusting colours and starting to pull out some of that fur. Now, when you can see, I've got some greys in my hand there, and I'm using those to sort of tone down those sort of goldeny areas that I put in earlier. As I said earlier, you know, I felt that they were, you know, I knew that they were going to be too strong, but I did want that warmth underneath his coat. But they were too, you know, it was that gold was too strong in its chrome, you know, too much colour in it. So I'm knocking that back by using some greys. And that's what you can do with colour. You know, start off brighter than you think brighter than you think you might need, and maybe darker than you think you might need, and then you can adjust from there. And greys are a very good way to sort of knock back colours. You know, if they're too bright and too vivid, you can knock them back with greys, and that'll help. Be a bit careful, obviously, that you don't put too much, because then you'll lose all your colour altogether. So when you see me sort of like going over these areas with my pastel pencils, in general, my touch is very light, as it always is with me. Touch is very light, and I'm just kind of teasing those colours together, really, you know, and knocking some back, and just literally going backwards and forwards between, starting to pull out some of these little individual hairs. You know, starting to get a feel that, you know, that it's not just a flat mass, so to speak. And this is why I do use the mixture of colours rather than just using one colour. You can find it looks more like a you know, a computerized drawing or whatever if you use solid colours. And that's the beauty of pastels. You know, they are just so lovely. They've got so much pigment in, and you really can get really beautiful effects. But I do this by, as you can see, by layering and you know, just adjusting as I go, keep sort of adding more. You know, I've pretty much done with my blending at this stage, and now I'm, you know, putting these top sort of fairy bits in. As I say, I really want him to look lovely and fluffy, so this is what I'm doing. So I'll let you watch me sort of go around here with my pencils. You can see how I'm adjusting different areas, adding a little bit more colour, you know, sort of really bringing out the furry bit of his coat. All right then, I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, his coat is really starting to feel soft and fluffy. I'm pretty happy. Every now and again, you've seen me coming in with a paper, you know, little paper torchon to help me blend. That's what I sort of mentioned earlier. If you want to soften down some areas, and that's really what I wanted to do with this pup. I really wanted him to feel soft and fluffy, and I kind of think I'm kind of there. And I did that with sort of using the pastel pencils and the paper torchon every now and again, just to help me soften out little areas. So now coming back into the background and starting to sort of build up that snow a little bit. Basically, I'm reaffirming what I did before, you know, but just sort of looking at my reference photo, getting another layer down. And as you can see at the moment there, I've got my trusty makeup sponge, which I'm just softening down those areas. I'm going to be adding more texture towards the front and sort of less texture as I go back, adding some extra lights in there, you know, where the light is hitting it. But by adding your texture at the, you know, at the lower half of the picture and, you know, less at the back, that's how you're going to make him feel, you know, as if, you know, kind of trying to create some distance. Obviously, you haven't got a horizon line in this, so that can be a little bit difficult. And that's the way you do it, you know, soften, make your marks stronger towards the, you know, towards the front of him and less texture and things going on at the back of him. And that's the way you're going to, you know, sort of that's going to help you. So now you're seeing me, and I'm actually going to pop some snow on our little pup. At the moment, you know, up until this point, I've avoided this purely because obviously we're using quite dark colours in our puppy there around his muzzle and things, and I didn't want this snow to be mucky or murky. You know, I wanted it really nice and fresh, as if he's just got sort of stuck his little nose in the snow. So you're going to see me now. I'm coming sort of between his little nose and the snow itself in the background, making sure that I've got the balance, and sort of like highlighting little areas in this front ground of the snow. Now, in all my areas, I'm trying to vary my marks and also vary the pressure that I'm actually using in any one area, especially around his nose, and, you know, the snow that's actually on him. Because obviously you don't want it to look like it's a solid lump, you know. You want variation, and so have you know, variation within your marks that you're putting down, both in the size of them, in the colour of them. I've used a couple of different colours there. You know, they look white on the camera, but you know, I've got a couple of different tones in there, and I've got a varying different, you know, amounts of heaviness that I put it down, and size of mark. And obviously there you saw me in with, you know, with my little sprinkly trick there with the, you know, scraping some pastel off, and if it's gone into areas that I don't want it, you know, I'll just go back in with the pencil, you know, around his eyes and things, and just, you know, make sure that they're you know, they're feeling nice and crisp. And so really you saw me pop my signature on it. Basically what I did, although there's no break in the video, I sort of went away, left it for a couple of days, came back, and you know, then just sort of saw if it needed anything else added to it. But in general, I'm pretty happy with him. You know, he really is getting there now. Just pulling out a few little individual fur, you know, making sure that I've got the shape around him. Now what I do, you know, when I pull out fur into, I don't want to obviously take too much muckiness into that lovely snowy background. So take a little bit of care when you pull out those fur, you know, that fur and things. But I think we're sort of almost there with him. I do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you've sort of, hope you have a go at painting this little puppy. Was adorable to paint, such fun. And you know, so pop on over to PaintmyPhoto, download the photo and have a go yourself. And obviously, you know, if you'd like to watch this at a slower pace, you know, where I sort of talk you through a little bit more of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and a little bit more step by step, then, you know, I've got the full-length version over on my Patreon channel. So do consider coming in and joining me over there. I'd love to see you, and obviously you'll see, you know, really, you know, sort of at a slow pace, so that you can sort of hopefully paint along with me. Okay then, so thank you so much for spending some of your time with me. I do appreciate it. If you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. It'll help me grow, and I'd really love to bring you some more videos over here on YouTube. Okay then, so I wish you a lovely week. I hope you get some chance to do some painting, and if you do, happy painting.